Dear Heavenly Father, I just thank you for this time that we can gather here and just go over the importance of ministry and the policy and what we do and why we do things here. So Lord, I just ask you guide us through this night and just help us to cover what we need to cover. And we say in your name, amen. All right, so welcome. Thank you guys. I know this is taking the time out of your night to be here, but this is important because we go over a lot of things in here. And like for our snack ladies here for VBS, like...
Real quick, if you look through this manual, again, as Shoshana said, it's important stuff because we need to make sure in the midst of that we know who is working with our kids, that we have policies in place. And I'll just tell you real quick, this actually came out of the first couple of years I was here. There were some things that just policies that weren't being followed, like that they were never really written down. As a parent of a little one at that time and overseeing things, we sat down with a group of people and put this together so that we had our policies written down so that we could train people and say, hey, here's what we require and here's what we do in certain situations with our ministry. So we thought we'd start at the very beginning of it, just about our church. You can read all the information there. We're not going to read every letter of everything to you tonight. So that what you have there is yours. You can write in it. You can draw pictures if you want. Whatever helps you remember what's there. But about a quarter of the way down the page, it says Vital Info of Lakeview Church, and it has the address and telephone number there. Let me just ask this. What is the reason it's important for us to have the address and telephone number listed in there, or the reason it would be important for you all to know the address and telephone number as someone who's working with our kids? In case there's an emergency, that way you know. And again, if you don't know that that's what the information is, you can read it there and know what it is. There is also little orange cards by each of our telephones that has that information as well. But we'll get to that in a little bit when we talk about emergency stuff. So you can see who we are as a church. You can see our purpose, our vision, our core values. Our core values is what makes us up as a church, why we operate and how we operate as we do. The goals and objectives of the youth ministry. So if you go to the top of that next page on the inside, they are all labeled page 13, I believe. They all say 13 on the bottom of them?
Mine says
Okay,
5.
excellent. You have an updated copy. Mine all say 13. Top of page 5, it says Goals of Lakeview Church Youth Ministry. You're going to hear this word youth ministry throughout things. And Shoshana, I don't want to just steal Shoshana's thunder, but she'll explain. We have some various terminology that we use throughout things, just so we kept things straight on what we were doing. The goal of our youth ministry, and that's anybody age 18 and under, okay? Anybody that we work with what's in that age group of 18 and under. Our goals, we want them to understand God's Word is relevant and God's Word is necessary for us to grow in our relationship with Jesus, okay? So that's number one. Number two, we want to provide godly teachers who are trained. We want to, even as a Christian Education Commission, provide opportunities. After this, we're doing a tech training, but provide opportunities for those working with our kids to grow and even have tools to be able to better themselves as teachers. Okay, our ministry may be directed specifically to the kids, but it involves a lot of people. Okay, we want to equip and provide tools for our children, parents, volunteers, teachers, etc. Again, when we work with young people, our ministry is not always just to them. It's to the parents. It's to the families. Without the parents, without the families, without people bringing them, we really don't have the kids. Okay. Finally, to make each youth's experience at Lakeview safe, fun, and profitable for the process of growing to become everything that God's planned. We know God has a plan for each one of these kids, and as we're part of it, we want to see them grow up to know who Jesus is. We do it in a very different way sometimes. Sometimes it's making our church look like a castle. Sometimes it's playing kickball out there. By the way, in case anybody's wondering, the teens did lose the other night. The adults beat the teens. So anyway, just saying. Some of them are bitter about it and want revenge. But anyway, so, okay. Then you can see our theme verses are there. Again, we won't belabor the point, but if you get a chance to read through those so you know kind of what we picked as the theme verse for our different ministries.
All right, so the next thing, I'm not going to, just like Pastor Ron said, I'm not going to read through everything, but we're going to go over the youth ministry definition just so you guys kind of understand what it is. So the first one is youth is any kid under the age of 18. So that could be from baby to 18. We consider all that general youth. Child or children would be considered pretty much under the age of 12, birth to 12. And then adult volunteers, anyone over 18. So we do require some of the leaders to be over 18 to do a certain leadership role, like a team leader or a director of a certain thing. However, we also do have student leaders. So student leaders are 12 to 18, which Vacation Bible School, Awana, we have student leaders because we want them to have the opportunity to come on. That's typically when they go into 7th grade. Then they can be a student leader. And then lastly, is staff. Anyone refer to ages 12 and up working with our ministries. So sometimes I'll say VBS staff or Awana staff or something like that within the certain ministry. That is how that. I'm not going to read.
Real quick, just so you know, that, and more than anything, that's just so within this manual, as we talk about things, we know what we're referring to, okay? Because, again, like Shoshana said, there may be times that, like, Kirian can be in charge of something, working with an adult, but if we don't have an adult, we need to have an adult present, someone over 18. It's that whole liability, responsibility thing. Not that we don't think that you can handle it, but we need to make sure that we have adults in places and not just whoever just trying to lead kids. So, okay.
And then we'll skip through some of the stuff. We'll go over behavior management policy. That is just basically with kids you're working with, whether in the kitchen or in the snacks or Awana, wherever you are. Always speak in a positive way. Praise good conduct. Try to understand each individual. This one is my favorite. Recognize achievement, whether that is a small achievement of something they've done well. Recognize that so that they feel encouraged and welcome. Pray regularly for your youth. That is actually another important one. And then try to see their side of the situation if something has happened. And do not yell or degrade them, basically. We don't yell. We don't do any of that. Just be kind or respect it. Talk in a firm voice if you have to, correcting them on an attitude. And then many of our Awana folks that would know, we are going to go over the 3-count discipline policy. Okay, this one I really want you to make sure you guys understand and study. The first one is first offense, which is the youth intentionally disobeys the rule or disturbing the others. The leaders will give them a count of 1 and ask them to stop the offense. It is suggested to find out why they did that or what the problem was. Give suggestions for what they should do next time the situation occurred. So we could give an example, like let's just say Pastor Ben is picking on Diana, and he's just picking on her and giving her a hard time. I, as a leader, would say, hey, Pastor Ben, can you please not do that? That's not very kind. That's very mean. Next time, just please refrain yourself and step away. All right, Diana, make sure you just step away too. All right? Okay. However,
I can't help myself.
Pastor Ben decides to keep...
I can't help myself. Oh.
So Pastor Ben decides to keep being mean, and he's picking on her again, and I see it. I'm going to give him the second offense, which is number 2. So I'm going to be like, okay, we got to talk about this. So whoever's in charge of the ministry, we will go to that. Let's just say Pastor Steve is in charge of it. So I'll bring you guys.
I don't want to go to Pastor Steve.
Oh, well, yeah.
No, Shoshana, please, no. Oh, sorry.
Okay, so we bring it in. So, for instance, most of the Awana leaders know that if number 2 comes, they bring the situation to me and they talk to me about it. So for Vacation Bible School, you guys, you would have to bring it the second time if it keeps happening. However, there's one thing that sometimes we all forget is now, let's just say Pastor Ben does something else, okay?
I cheat playing games.
Yeah, he cheated at kickball the other night, and that is a whole different day. And that goes to number...
It's questionable. It's questionable.
Cass
Anyway.
like, right? So that's a whole back to number 1 for that. But that is not a number 3 automatically. If that's 2 different situations, 2 different things. All right? So we have to be like, hey, stop cheating. That's not a good thing. That's not the fair way to play. All right? Stop it. He stops it. We're good. We don't have to worry about that.
And it might be that even if I'm having that kind of night,
Yeah.
Shoshana wants to talk to me, I'm like, hey, listen, you're having an awful night.
Yeah.
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
I'm picking on Diana again.
Typically, you could have teens or kids having a hard time through the night, and sometimes you just gotta listen to them, see where they're coming from, what is going on. Now, if Pastor Ben is just really not listening to me or Pastor Steve, he's just really picking on her, we go to the third offense, which has not really exactly happened to me.
It happened to me once.
Happened to him once, yes. So, sorry.
It's never fun.
It's
But
not,
it
because
happens,
the
so.
third person is pretty much we contact the parents. We say, hey, we've tried to figure this out, we've tried to adjust it. I need, I'm going to be like, hey, Ralph, I need you to come pick up your son, because he is out of control right now. Right?
You might want to call
like
Becky instead. You might want to call Becky. She's probably the one to.
Oh, Becky. I would call Becky.
Anyway.
She'd be good.
She would
But-
say keep him.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah.
Problem now.
Like, get over here.
My
So-
dad said he. Yeah. Anyway, never mind. Go ahead. We are not going to get through this, are we? Go
No.
ahead.
So you have to call the parents, and typically if it's a WANA or VBS, I have to call the parents. If it's 180 Laurel Mission, he has to call the parents. Even in Laurel Mission as well, you would have to call mom and dad to come down and pick them up. Okay, that's why we always stick with it. However, if it's a physical violence like punching, threats, hitting, automatically to number 2. Say he punched me and it hurt, it's automatically number 2. All right?
Only if it hurts. No,
No.
never mind. Sorry.
Any situation, even if it doesn't hurt. Okay? So just remember through these 3 counts that we do, remember if you see them making trouble, redirect the situation before it gets anywhere. Always try to keep it in a positive energy. Especially if they're always bothering her. Kind of redirect them, distract them, talk to them about something else. And you can read the list. Always lead by example. Please don't ignore the bad, inappropriate behavior and language. Yes.
Having worked with ministries before, do you have somewhere you keep track and write this stuff down and keep a log? Because someday you're going to need that log.
Oh wait, we're getting there.
We're actually getting there.
And
It's-
the other thing, real quick too, is that the offense, like if I get to number 2 because I'm picking on Diana tonight, tomorrow night I come in with a fresh start. I don't start with a number 2. I come in fresh and new. But we do have that's what's on that next page where she's going to get in just a minute.
Yeah. So the next page is actually the incident report policy and procedure. Okay, that is for anything that happens in any accident, injury, like a Band-Aid, there's something they need, a cut, whatever happened, a verbal confrontation or a physical fight between 2 individuals, any measure of discipline that progresses to a number 2 or higher on the discipline policy, or any reports of signs, physical, verbal, or sexual abuse. Anytime you are one-on-one private setting with a youth whom you are not a parent of during Lakeview Church, sponsored by the youth ministry function. So anything that like that happens, we always fill out an incident report. The incident report is in the resource office down at the end of that hallway to your right. There's one in the Awana closet and the nursery. Pretty much all discipline beyond verbal warnings must be documented with incident reports. Anything small, whatever, we always write it down. I think Tracy can back that up for Awana. She had to write a lot last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially if it's a small thing, you always write it down. And I actually keep my incident reports on file. I have a file saved, and so does Pastor Ben. And we keep it on file so that way if it comes back to us, we're like, hey, this happened. One thing is that if it happens, please write it as soon as possible the day of. Don't take one home and write it and then bring it to me later on a Sunday morning or something like that. Write it the moment it happened or right after it happened so that we know right away what happened. And the picture right here on that next page, I think it's page 3.
7.
Mine says 3. 7. Okay. All right. That is going to show what you have to do. You write what
I not
date
right?
happened, time.
That one, yeah.
the name of the kid or the youth that's involved, what happened, what action did you take? Did you talk to them? Did you bring it to me? What happened? And then follow up. A lot of times I write that down, or sometimes the team leader, the director, or Sunday school teacher will tell the parents what happened. And then you write it, follow up, and then my signature and Pastor Ben's signature, including yours as well, so that the parent knows what happened and that I have it on a file in case I get a phone call about it. And I'd be like, yep, this is what happened, this is how it happened. Because there's times where I've had an incident report that would come a week or two later, and I didn't know about it. So biggest thing is fill it as soon as possible.
And where do we put those?
Give those to Shoshana.
To me.
Yep. Fill it out.
After
Give
you
it to,
fill it.
yeah.
In the mailbox bit, or?
Most of
If-
the time I have people drop it off in my office or give it to me in person. I always carry like a clipboard with me. So, yeah.
Yeah, the main thing with those is definitely the fact that if there's an issue with something that happens at Awana, VBS, 180, where's the parent or where's the person going to call? They're going to call us at the church. There's nothing in what there are some things. There are a number of frustrating things or whatever. But one of them is if I get a call from somebody and I have no idea something happened, so we need to know right away. Just keep an eye out on what's going on, if somebody gets hurt, again, rug burn may seem like, oh, that's a little thing, but if little Johnny gets rug burn, goes home and something gets infected or whatever, then we know that something happened. Even last year when we were on the mission trip, we had one of our girls break her arm. And so, that was filled out because, again, I've got to make the reports to the insurance company for all that stuff and things like that. So that just helps us to know and have a log on what's going on. So, does that answer your question? Okay.
As long as you keep them.
We do.
on record.
Yep.
Don't throw them ever away.
So,
You never know when they come
yeah.
back to bite you.
yep. Yep.
All right.
That's why we have big file cabinets.
That's right.
Oh. All right, I'm going to skip some pages. We'll come back to it. But if you go to, if you flip over one page at the very bottom, it should say emergency procedures. Did y'all see that page? Emergency procedures page. Page, what is it? Page 5. We've been through different versions of this, but I have all my notes in one of them, so I apologize. Anyway, emergency procedures. Believe it or not, there are times that emergencies happen and we need to know what to do. Because the kids are kids, and as parents leave them here, we're responsible for them, and therefore we need to make sure to know what to do if an emergency happens and not just make it up as we go. First thing, fire safety. So if there is a fire and you happen to notice or smell smoke, please check out to see what's going on. It could be that I just tried to make biscuits. Some people know what I'm talking about. Others, you can ask me about it later. Or it could be that there's a fire. If there's a fire, here's what we do. Make sure that you notify the leader in charge and start getting people out of the building. Our safe place to meet, if we ever have to evacuate the building with the kids, is Pastor Steve's house is right over here. The parsonage is just to the west of the church. It's on the north side of his house. Okay, that gets us up out of the way. That gets us away from anything that would be happening. If EMS or fire needs to come in, they'll come in this way. But that gets us away from things. Or if there's other things that happen, we have to evacuate, we go there. Okay? Does that make sense? All right. Fire department number. What is the fire department number?
911.
Thank you. With our phones, it used to be you had to hit a line button and then 911. Now you just pick it up, down 911, and you're good to go. Okay? By each of our phones, there's one of these. Okay? There's a card, an orange card that tells you emergency things. It reminds you of some of these things. It says, an emergency, pick up the phone and dial 911. Because guess what happens when we have an emergency? Sometimes we forget what number 911 is. Okay. Sorry, that was the old dad joke. But anyway, it's got our address on it. Anybody know our address offhand?
Territorial Road.
Territorial Road. What's the nearest intersection? 99 Territorial. Very good. 4616 East Territorial. That's our address. Okay. On that card as well is my phone number, Pastor Steve's phone number. It tells you where the first aid kits are, and it tells you where there's an AED. Okay. There's an AED. If you look out beside Pastor Steve's office by that door over there, there's a little sign that says AED. We do have one. Okay. All right. So that's as far as that goes. So if there's a fire, again, we'll leave. We'll get the kids out. Again, things can be replaced. People can't. Okay. If by chance we have severe weather, if we're here, if we have a severe weather warning on hand, if we know that severe weather is coming, whether it's snow, ice, things like that, if it's thunderstorms, chances are, with something like a Vacation Bible School or Awana or 180, we're going to cancel. Okay? If we know something big is coming, we're going to cancel. All right? Typically for you Awana folks, we try to cancel by 4 o'clock that day. Sometimes it's hard because it doesn't start snowing until 4 o'clock. Sometimes they say it's going to do a bunch of stuff, and then it never does. But we try to make our best decision on that so that we know what's happening and try to communicate that to folks. So if by chance we are here and a tornado siren goes off, the impact center is not the safe place to be. Okay? It is a metal pole barn building. All right? Our safe places to be literally are the bathrooms in this building, the educational hallway down that way. Okay, those are the places that we will go if we have to take cover or shelter for something. Okay. What's that? Nope. He's got crawl space. Yeah. In the midst of that, just as a question, if you have to evacuate kids out for a fire or evacuate them for an emergency, what do you think you should take with you?
The kids.
What's that? The attendance sheet. Forget the kid. No, just kidding. Make sure you have the kids. But to make sure you have the kids, you need your attendance sheet so that make sure you have the kids. Okay. That way we'll take the roster there. We will release the kids at the time that we need to. So, for instance, if I show up, or if we have to evacuate for something, and I come and say, I'm going to take Braden, honestly, we're going to wait until we give an all clear from our leader that, yes, we can have people go. Because depending on what the situation is, we may need people to stay in place or whatever. Okay. If we happen to, if you look there on that next page from where I started, it says lost youth procedure. This is just in case you have a group of kids that you look out and you see Case is missing. He's in your group. You notice he's missing. He's not there. The first thing you do, look to where you saw him last. Look to where he should be. If you're in the sanctuary, do y'all remember from Awana years and years and years ago? Where do you look for them in the sanctuary? Underneath the pews. We used to look around and be like, where's Johnny? Well, he was laying underneath one of the pews during handbook time. So, but we'll look around, try to find them in the immediate thing. We have never dealt with this to this point, which I am so happy. But to get beyond that, if we can't find them within a short amount of time, we'll make sure then that we let the leader of that ministry know. So if it's Awana or VBS, we let Shoshana know. We'll gather all the other kids together, make sure we have them, and start looking. At that point, we're going to make some phone calls and make sure parents know and things like that. Okay? So, if we have an injury, say they're playing games in the gym, Merlin is just doing his best, killing it, and he, cash tackles him and Merlin breaks his leg. Not that we want that to happen. Okay? Not hoping that on anybody. But we have somebody that has a serious injury. The thing that we want to do is we want to make sure that the person who's injured is comfortable where they're at. Okay? We won't pick Merlin up and carry him out of the gym. We'll leave him there. We'll take all the other kids out somewhere else and do something. A few years ago, during Awana, we had someone get sick in the middle of the gym. So, again, we took all the kids out. We redid some stuff. We played games in here just because we wanted to have whatever happened be there and then move everybody else out of the situation. Okay? That's where leaders, we need you just to kind of roll with things. Play games, duck, duck, goose, whatever it is you need to do to keep the kids' attention there while people take care of whoever's hurt or sick or whatever's going on. Okay? The communication regarding emergencies, I'm going to read this word for word and then try and explain it a little bit better too. All communication with the public regarding emergencies and or any other confidential information other than the initial call to 911 will be handled by the Christian education pastor, that's me, the senior pastor, that's Pastor Steve, or another Lakeview Church appointed public relations person. Okay, that could be Shoshana as our children's ministry director. That could be Terry Pennington as our board chairman, or whoever we would appoint being the person to speak for whatever happened. Any questions regarding that incident from parents, press, or other individuals should be directed to us and not speculated upon staff members. We have this worded like this, and let me tell you of a little history. I worked in Christian camping for 8 years, okay, before coming to Lakeview. During that time in Christian camping, every year the camp had to be inspected. One of the camps I worked at was under the jurisdiction of 9 different entities. Everything from child services, because camps in Michigan are considered like a daycare, to amusement park because of a water slide, to waterfront, to RV. So there's all sorts of things. So when it comes to communicating to other people about what happened with something, we need to make sure that we keep what happened, and not guess and be like, oh, Merlin got hurt, and it made big news because Merlin, I don't know, the big star, They want to know what happened, whatever. They come and they start asking questions. I don't want to speculate and say, well, I think what happened was this, or I saw this, because we all know that there's always different perspectives and what's happening. Within that camping situation, what happened is an inspector came and started asking people, while they probably shouldn't have, started asking summer staff people what was going, about things, and they didn't have any idea what was happening. This camp was large, 200 acres, lots of things. They were licensed for, I believe it was like 250 kids, but they had other people that were staying there in the campground and stuff. So they took a guess, and they said, there's like 500 people here. And there were lots of questions that then came up because they were giving, not on purpose, but they were giving misinformation. Okay, it takes, you'll hear something in a video I'll watch in a little bit. It takes a long time to build a good reputation. It takes seconds to lose that reputation. So we want to be sure that it's not that we're hiding things. We want to be sure that we communicate the right things to the right people and not just take guesses at it. Does that make sense?
All right, so we're going to go safety and security procedure, okay? This is just a policy and procedure of what to do here. All staff should be aware of what's occurring within the ministry activity for safety and security of our youth. Pretty much this just means always be aware of everything going on. Someone that's walked in the church, you're not quite sure who they are. And so always be aware, look out for things that don't look right. These individuals, these can be individuals who don't belong. Could be like something they bring in that's a weapon, conflict, or something that we just don't know who they are. All visitors to a program must have permission to be present at the ministry program and will be given a visitor name tag, which for Awana, that is what I do. I do have a visitor name tag for those that come and visit us. They are not a part of it, even if they regularly attend our church. It's just they're not a part of the ministry, so there's no reason for them to be over there.
With that, just as a kind of follow up with that, because that may sound confusing, whatever. We want people to be here for things, but we want to make sure the right people are at the right places. Again, part of being involved with the Youth and Children's Ministries is to go through this. We do the screening process. We do a policy review with you all, and those people haven't been through it. Okay, the only people who are exempt from that is any of our staff. So if Shoshana hangs out at youth group, she comes and helps anyway. But if Pastor Steve comes over, Pastor Steve doesn't usually help, but he's the senior pastor. He gets an exemption on that. Okay. However, if for some reason, we had this a couple years ago, even with Vacation Bible School. Husband and wife came that night, and I set it up just to see what would happen. Wife was helping, had her name tag on, and husband just wandered around. He had my permission to be here. And I said, how many people questioned you? And they said, nobody. He said, nobody. I said, okay, we need to review that. Because just because we recognize somebody as being there, if they're not part of that ministry regularly, they don't have that visitor tag on, we need to make sure that they aren't part of what's going on, because they haven't been, may not been through the training, may be somebody that we're like, hey, we're glad you're at church. We want you to know Jesus. We want you to have your life grow in Him. But working with teens is not the place to be right now. Or working with kids is not the right place to be right now. So, with that,
Yeah. And for Vacation Bible School this year and for Awana, I am doing the visitors tag thing. So that way, if there is a family coming to visit, they need to wear that visitor's name tag. So make sure you be aware of that. Just be aware of your surroundings, especially anything that could be hazard or potentially harmful to youth. If someone has found, what does that mean?
What's that? Where are you at? Be aware of your surroundings. Let me give you an example of this. I did this training one time, or I did Awana training one time. The heaters in this room used to fall apart if you'd look at them. Okay? But the way that they were built, if somebody walked by them, they might just fall apart. I tore one of them apart, put pieces everywhere, just to see if anybody would do anything. And I'll just say, one person came in, they're like, this isn't right, and they put it back to where it should be. Okay? If there's stuff that's going to be danger to people, and you see that it's going to be a danger, whether it's, kids playing in the gym and there's somebody stuck something up in the middle of the thing that somebody might fall on, look for it. Don't just sit back and wait for somebody to get hurt. Okay.
Right. Lock doors. Pretty much we lock certain parts of our doors in a certain part of the church. So the purpose is to direct traffic to the main entrance that you guys walked in. So that way only people are coming in through there. The biggest thing is that Sunday mornings, the doors of the connectors between the Impact Center, right over there where you walk to the Impact Center, those are locked and should always be locked. That also includes Awana. We always keep those doors locked.
Once we get going.
Once we get going. Sometimes we leave it open at 7 o'clock in case there's kids coming in late and we want them to come in. So pretty much between, like it says, in 7 to 8, we keep them locked. They will be unlocked at picked up times. We'll pretty much do the same for Vacation Bible School. Only people that are coming in should be coming in the main entrance during maybe, I know, 180, sometimes you guys leave the two doors unlocked for teens to come on in. But we just want you guys to know that if you see some of the doors unlocked, make sure you let one of us know and everything, and we'll make sure it's locked so that we're not having people randomly coming in through the kitchen or coming on the other side, and we don't know who they are. We have great facility stuff here at the church, and classes and programs are welcome to use. The playground, well, it says Gaga pit. We don't really have a Gaga pit.
It's not there anymore.
So, it's gone. So, however, for all that stuff, especially out on the playground, we want at least two adults present.
Just a note on that real quick. The reason that we have requirement of having more than one adult places is that, again, it's extra eyes. Things can happen, and even when we first started writing this, we had somebody, actually it was back-to-back weeks in Cubbies, we had 2 people that got hurt because there weren't enough leaders in places what was going on. The first week, nobody saw. The second week, everybody saw what happened. So.
I'm going to skip through to
Okay.
Release of youth policy. So this one's a little bit challenging right now because we are using KidCheck, but we're at the process where we're not really sure if it's working well for us anymore because it's stubborn, it does its own thing, and it doesn't work in a way. For Awana and Vacation Bible School and other ministry involving kids, they have to be picked up by the legal guardian on the list of the kid checkout. And we have kid checkout, and we still have their parents, guardians, and everything that picked up. So if we have someone that comes to pick up their child, or it's a grandma, but grandma's not on that guardian list, then we cannot release her. One thing I've done is that I've called the parents. Hey, so-and-so is here to pick up so-and-so. Is this okay? And a lot of times they're like, oh my gosh, thank you. I appreciate you for checking in on the safety of my child. They most likely appreciate it. And so sometimes I'll just say, hey, just so you know, if you want to, add them to the guardian list so that they can be picked up properly. So Vacation Bible School, they'll be released from the sanctuary. Awana, they're released from the gym. So making sure that they know, parents know, hey, I can't pick up my child unless I have them so-and-so guardian list.
Transportation policies. transportation policy is this, is that people, if we're going on road for something, cannot ride in the back of a vehicle or in a vehicle with less seat belts than what's got. So, for instance, the church van has 15 seat belts. We can put 15 people in the church van. Okay, we can't put more than 15 in that van. Okay, you can put more, but that's illegal. We weren't going to do that. Okay. The other thing is that we do have anybody who's driving church vehicle, like the church van, we do have a form that people have to fill out so that we have that screening process there too. Okay, just to make sure that we are letting people of appropriate age drive that vehicle. Okay. All the time, whenever we take somebody in a vehicle like that, we'll have at least one adult in the vehicle. My preference is more than that, but there are times where we've taken we've had 3 adults to 30 kids, which is a good, nice ratio, but at the same rate, we have our deals, but we always make sure that there's always enough seat belts for people and enough adults to pay attention to what's going on. Okay. Personnel policies, in a nutshell, maybe this is where we should start with this, but in a nutshell, this is why and part of why we do this. Okay. If you look there underneath, anyone who's involved with our kids or youth ministries, within our youth ministries, so our youth, our children, our teens, our students, all have to fill out that application and reference form there. I know some of you may not have gotten it. Some of you may have filled them out a long time ago. If you already have filled that out, that's great. We have them. Okay. If you're not sure about it, let us know and we'll check to be sure. Okay. All leaders working with youth ministries must participate in the Lakeview Church Youth Ministry Essentials Training. Guess what? Y'all get to check that one off tonight too. Okay. Leaders agree to respect the beliefs of Lakeview Church as explained in the Confession of Faith and stated in the core values, and will do nothing intentionally by word or act to detract from the testimony of the ministry. In other words, I'm on board with what Lakeview Church is doing, and I'm not going to sit back and talk bad about it. Okay. Number 4, leaders agree to the following requirements: be a born-again Christian, be an example to believers of personal and godliness. Flipping over the page, loyal to the staff and education team. In other words, you're like, hey, I'm willing to follow along with these policies and procedures. I'm not going to say I'm going to do my own thing, even though you tell me this is what you want me to do. Faithfulness and attendance and support to Sunday services of Lakeview Church. Over the years, we had been a little bit lax on this, but anybody at this point, anybody who's helping with our ministries, our kids, our youth ministries, in the past we've had some parents who might attend another church. They don't have any kids saying like, hey, can I help in some way? We've decided as a ministry that we are reining that back into. If you're helping with one of our ministries, we expect that you're on board with what's happening at Lakeview Church and you're a regular attender here. Does that make sense? Okay. Faithfulness to the programs you're involved with and periodic leadership training meetings. In other words, don't say, hey, I'm going to help with Awana and then never show up. Hey, I'm going to help with Vacation Bible School and then never show up. Okay. So, okay. Listen, if you don't, if it's you're not help, we'll tell you. We will tell you, Jackie, if you're not helping us. And by the way, our first step is not to fire volunteers, but to retrain. So, commitment to giving your attention to the children and youth during your program. In other words, it's real easy to want to, and about every year I've ever done Awana, I've had to call Awana leaders aside and say, listen, I need you all to focus on the kids. You're catching up on what the latest basketball or golf score was, but you need to focus on the kids. They're here for 2 hours. Please give them your 2 hours. Okay. Willingness to insist with your group and the overall program. There may be times, like Vacation Bible School. I'll just give an example, and I'm not saying this will happen. I'm saying this could happen. That for the night we're like, hey, our whole first and second grade, all of our first and second grade teachers got sick. And they're not going to be here. And I'm like, I need somebody to do first and second grade. And be like, hey, Jackie, could you for the night help? And Jackie could say, hey, listen, you know what? First and second graders just are not my thing. If somebody asked me to lead Cubbies for a night, I would probably do it. But I'd be like, oh, my word, this is hard. I taught Cubbies lesson a couple times, and it is the most difficult thing I've ever done at this church. Okay?
But I need you to lead
So,
it.
but I've done it. So being willing to help with that. So anyway, so that's that. Again, we just, our desire is that we honor Christ in all that we do. Okay, we want to honor Christ in all that we do. And in the midst of that, as leaders, please do that. Do your best to honor Christ in all you do. Expected behavior, just so you know, whether you like it or not, the kids are going to look up to you, whether you're making cookies, serving them. Aren't there cheese balls as one of the snacks?
Yeah.
Whether you're serving them cheese balls or you're giving them a gospel presentation, the kids look up to you.
Those aren't cheese balls, they're going to be dragon eggs.
Oh, okay.
So
Dragon
that's
eggs.
Okay, I'm sorry. You're serving them dragon eggs. They look up to you, and they need real examples. You've probably heard, and Pastor Steve even has said it a number of times during this Thessalonian series that we preach the gospel always. You know, we preach the gospel always. Modesty policy: please dress in a way that represents Christ well. I'm not going to tell you what you can and can't wear, unless we'll just leave it there. I could come up with some ridiculous example, but we'll leave it there. Okay. I always say, dress in such a way that you would feel comfortable leaving your children with that person. But the way that our world is today, that could be open to interpretation. So don't interpret that too much. Okay. Uniforms. Some of our areas of ministry do have things that we ask people to wear a shirt or whatever. We ask all of our staff to wear a name tag for our kids' ministries. So that would be part of a uniform. For Awana, we ask our leaders to wear the Awana shirt. For VBS, I think you have VBS shirts or whatever.
Yes.
Some things like that. So, but not all of our things do. We don't ask all of our Sunday school teachers to wear the Shoshana is the greatest shirt. I think that would be great, don't you? Yeah, Merlin's like, absolutely. So we're gonna have to get those shirts made, aren't we? So anyway. So that's that. The screening procedure, again, we just kind of talked through that a little bit. We have the training time. We have the application thing that you fill out. I didn't know what else to call it, so we called it application. Okay? It's just saying, hey, I want to work with them. We go through that. If the reference forms that you have there are for us, the easiest thing. If you give that to somebody, they fill out and give it back to us. So if we have questions on it, we can get in touch with them. If you're like, hey, listen, I could give that reference form. Oops. I can give that reference form to Tony, but Tony's busy and he might forget to get to me. No, Tony's one of the most responsible people in the world. Okay, he is. I trust him with that. But if you're like, listen, could you call Tony? Or I would call Tony and talk to him and say, hey, Tony, can you give me a reference for Betty? And Tony would say, hey, Betty's awesome. And anyway, okay. So we can do it that way as well. But if you already have done those application forms in that's all great. Okay. The last thing that I'll put there is the grievance procedure. Sometimes, whether it's ministry or other things, people don't get along. Okay. Have you ever had somebody in a church that you haven't gotten along with? Okay. Let it be noted that the brother and sister are pointing at each other. Okay. Yeah, sometimes there's things that we don't get along or we can't see eye to eye on things. If there's something that happens, we have listed here policy and procedure, just biblically, how we handle it. Okay? Number one thing. I'm just going to use you two since you did it. So Kirian and Case can't get along. First thing Kirian's going to do is she's going to go to Case and say, hey, listen, we need to work this out. Okay? If they can't work it out from there, then we go biblically. Somebody else meets with them. Okay? If you guys can't get along with something, come see me. We'll sit down. We'll talk about it. Okay? That's biblically. You take somebody else with you and you try to work it out. If that doesn't work there, we go to the number 3 step, which is to meet with church leadership. Okay? If they can't get along and we can't work things out, I can't help them work things out, then we can call for, biblically, even whether it's the Awana leadership team, the Christian Education Commission, or senior pastor or something. We can get people together and try and work it out. Okay, we're going to handle conflicts, things that might happen biblically. Does that make sense? There's even a form that we have. We need more forms, right? There's even a form that I have that looks like this, that if we'd ever get to meeting together, that we would fill out just so we know what's going on. Again, it's the paper trail you're talking about. So to make sure that we have it. All right, finally, I guess two things, and then we'll wrap up. We're almost there. If you look there at organizational structure, God is on top, works down through. We have a very interesting thing now with Shoshana on staff. Shoshana is our children's ministry director. She technically works for Pastor Steve, okay, but also with the Christian Education Commission, so that's why it looks all funky. All right, and each of those develops their way down through there. So if you look and say, hey, there's an issue with children's ministry, Shoshana's the person to go to. If there's an issue with things within our youth ministry, student ministry, that falls under what I do, okay? And then there's other things. So we want to make sure that we keep those channels to the right places. All right?
There's also one thing, nursery, Pastor Ben technically oversees.
Yeah.
I don't oversee nursery, just
No.
so everyone knows.
Yep. So, excellent. All right. Are there any questions that you all have at this point about what's in that folder? Yes.
Other than the offices, where would we find a phone?
Thank you. That's a good question.
That's a good one, yeah.
There is a telephone in the kitchen. Okay.
In the
And
kitchen.
there's a telephone in each of the offices, my office, Steve's office, Shoshana's office, Pam's office. And then also in the Impact Center, there's a telephone in the first room on the right. So just past the bathroom. I'm going to try and do this while I try to turn this thing on too. Okay. One of the things that we're not going to be, that we want to make sure that we do cover, we're not going to cover all of the information that's listed here. But I want to make sure that we do cover this. In the event that there's ever anything that happens within our church, we are required the same way that school would be as well. If a teacher was ever in a situation where a child would admit to something happened to them or something like that, we are required by law. As a pastor, I can't keep that quiet. I have to report that. Okay. Also, in that, we need to make sure, and we want to make sure that we keep things safe, because again, it takes a long time to build a reputation and a short time for that to go away. We don't want to be naive to it. We want to make sure that you know that if something happens, we want to take care of it in the proper way. Okay. So, at this time, here's the procedures, and sometimes we ask, well, why do we got to do these? Why do we have to go through this? And honestly, it's because we need to make sure that we're responsible for what happens within our walls during our ministries. We can sit here and belabor the point and talk over and over and over and over and over. And by the way, just so you know, I kicked them out because we have a video that we are actually required to show you and required to watch, and some of the things they talk about are a little upfront graphic. It makes me feel dirty every time I watch it. Okay. But in the midst of this, it's good for us to know and good for us to hear these things because we need to make sure that we do our best to build up the ministry. Okay. If you look down through there, there's all this is actually taken right out of the information and right out of the things that right out of the what the state of Michigan would require. Okay, it's taken straight from that if something would occur, and so we have the duty to report down at the very bottom of that page where it says Youth Ministry Incident Report. I want to make sure that I highlight this. It says staff procedures. Staff shall watch for any of these signs of abuse or neglect. If a child is suspected or if a youth confides in you having been abused or neglected, report it to the senior pastor, the Christian education pastor only. Don't go to any other staff member. Remember, staff regards the people who are working. Okay? I would add in there, you can go and talk to Shoshana as well, especially if it's a kids ministry thing. And that will stay among those staff, and then we will take care of the things that we have to do to report that. Okay. The thing that I will encourage you and say is it is always good not to be one-on-one with kids. And if you are one-on-one with kids, make sure that you fill out one of those incident reports so that we know that happened. Okay. Whether it's you, especially if it's an opposite gender thing. But even if it's not, if you're one-on-one with somebody, it's good to know to be accountable. Okay. So what we're going to do, we got about 10 minutes of this video to watch, and then we'll wrap up with any questions or things like that. But in the midst of stuff, we have a good ministry, and we have a good reputation with our ministry, and we want to keep it that way. We don't want to do anything that would jeopardize that or put ourselves in a spot where we got to say, hey, we did not do our due diligence to protect the kids and the families that are here for the ministries that we have and the things we have involved with. So if you would say, listen, we want to do everything that we can to protect the kids that come and are part of our ministry. We want to glorify God in what we do. We want to have a good reputation as a church, but also we want to glorify God in what we do. And so part of what we want to do is to do everything we can on the front end of things to screen our volunteers, to look out for signs of things happening. Again, if a child would admit or say to you, we have to take action on that, okay? It's not something that you can just say, well, but I don't know, okay? I will tell you very seriously, there's times in camping ministry where there was one of our campers that confided in their counselor that something was happening. There was a lot of stuff that happened, but then what happened is there was actually healing that came out of that. That individual actually came back, worked for me on staff, was one of my best staff people. But to address those things, they need to be addressed properly. But we're going to do our best on the front end of things to make sure that we address those things with you all as our staff. To say, don't put yourselves in situations where you're going to compromise yourself. Don't put yourself in a situation where you're going to, whether it's inadvertently or advertently, do something that will hurt your testimony and the testimony that we have as a ministry as well. So, are there any questions that you all have regarding any of this stuff? Excellent. Well, thank you all for your time. Let me pray for you. If you're hanging out for our thing here afterwards, we're going to meet in the youth room and start over there. So, okay? All right. Father God, I thank you for the volunteers that we have to do ministry. I thank you for their heart for kids, that they want to see them come to know you, whether it's by working with them in a ministry setting, leading them from place to place, or teaching a lesson, or being an Awana leader, or playing games, or making food, or whatever it may be. We thank you, Lord, that you've called each one of us to ministry. And I just ask, God, that you would let us be faithful to that. We pray that Lord, as we've gone over these policies and procedures, Lord, there's a lot more behind what we talked about even tonight. Lord, I pray that you help us to know those things in and out. So if something arises, we know exactly what to do. Lord, I pray a blessing over the people in this group, each one of them in the roles that they play, to be a light for you. And Lord, that we would come back a year from now or years from now and just celebrate how you used your people to see lives changed for Christ. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.